first thing I did is I hired a VA, and I wish someone would have told me to hire a VA from like day one. I had the VA. She was amazing. I had her for 2 years, and I had her doing all the stuff I didn't want to do. I had her doing my notes where I would send her just like an audio of the patient visit, and she would transcribe it. She would do all the billing, and she would send the patient like, receipts and super bills and everything. She kept track of all my books for me, like my actual business books. And she kept track of a lot of the patient data, like all the stuff, basically anything that involved a computer, I trained her to do. And it actually didn't take that much time to train her. And then the other thing that's been really good is anything that like takes me longer than it should to do, right? Kind of like, again, buying back time, I try to outsource. So like outsourcing the website and the website editing was really huge for me. Even like some of my interior design stuff, like, for my office, it's like, I don't know what to do for design, right? Like, it's like table, chairs, like, yeah, it's a table and it's a chair. And so, using, other friends and colleagues and just taking pictures and like asking questions and having them make decisions for me, like that was huge, right? For the new space.
From 11 concussions to building a thriving chiropractic practice, Jared's journey is a testament to resilience and finding your passion. In this episode, we dive into how he turned a personal struggle into a successful business. Get ready for insights on finding your niche, balancing passion with profits, and building a practice that truly aligns with your values. Jared, welcome back to the show for round 2. Since the first time for the listener, so they know the audio didn't record. So we're going to try this again.
Sounds good.
I'm excited.
I'm excited also.
Some of the topics we're going to get into are passion and profits, figuring out what your ideal practice is, the hybrid practice model, which you've kind of put together, motivational interviewing, networking as a growth strategy. These are just some of the things that I've taken notes on and want to tap into on this conversation. But where I'd like to start, which is where we started last time, is 11 concussions.
Yes.
Let's tell that story.
Yeah. So I've had over 11 concussions. The 11 are the for sure ones, and who knows how many bonus concussions there were throughout my time. And a lot of them were random accidents as kids, like falling off a bike, running a bike straight into a wall, head first, slipped and fell and hit a wall a couple times, things along those lines. And then the last 4 were football related, one my junior year of high school, one senior year of high school, and then pretty much got 2 back-to-back freshman year of college just playing D3 football. And that's when I knew like the last one wasn't right. Like that last one, it kind of felt like it was like almost like too easy to get a concussion. And yeah, so that pretty much ended my football career and also kind of became a little bit of my own dark night of the soul in the beginning of kind of my health journey, as well as my journey to essentially who I am now in a lot of ways.
Did you know that they were concussions when they all happened? Or is this looking back in retrospect?
Looking back in retrospect, like the football related ones, definitely. And then there was a couple as a kid that were pretty bad where it was like I was knocked out for like a solid several minutes. And so like at the time it was like, yeah, concussions. But, back, in the mid 90s and early 2000s, it was like, yeah, concussion. Like, he got knocked out. Like that was it. There wasn't much to do as much as people know today. And even then it's still not well known to like what to do when someone has a concussion to help prevent like that damage to the brain essentially.
Yeah, they're micro traumas essentially, right? Which obviously this is something we're learning more and more about, but yeah, at the time we probably didn't even think twice about it.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense in terms of I love a good scratch your own itch story of you had your own experience with concussions that kind of led you down this path of health and wellness. So then where did chiropractic come into the picture then? Was this somebody that gave you advice in the realm of health and wellness, or where did that step in?
So the whole story is essentially got the concussions, and during school, my grades weren't good. And a huge part of it was the concussions, right? Like essentially I had short-term memory loss, delusion. I would completely forget working on projects. And the funniest, looking back, it's funny. In the moment, it sucked, but it was still kind of funny too. Was I wish I remember the professor's name, but I can't remember. Where it was essentially my senior capstone class, right? And everyone else was doing their project, and I was at the time thinking about becoming a strength and conditioning coach, right? And that's what ultimately led me to becoming a chiropractor. And it was for that class, everyone was doing projects on like what's better, like back squats, front squats, reverse lunges versus step ups for like quad activation versus glute activation, right? And he was like, you're not doing any of that. You're doing your report on like post-concussion syndrome. And he's like, no one's going to help you except for you. No one's going to figure it out except for you. So the least I'm going to do is I'm going to make you figure it out as part of your senior thesis, right? And so that was my senior thesis paper. But the one moment I had that was really funny was I'm sitting down like in the library doing the research, and I don't know if you remember, but back then with the Google hyperlinks, and if you already clicked a hyperlink, it would be like purple instead of blue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like doing the research, and I'm like, man, some of these links I've already clicked through, right? And I start reading some of the research papers, and I'm like, I feel like I might have read these papers already, right? And it literally wasn't until like I got the research papers, I'm writing the outline, and I'm like, I think I might have done this before. And I'm checking my Google Drive everywhere for like to see, because it wouldn't have been the first time I've like been halfway through a project and been like, oh, I did this already, and I found the paper already done. So I can't find in my Google Drive, look at my Dropbox. Sure enough, I had the entire rough draft, like 14 pages, completely done with the outline, the bibliography, like pretty much the paper was done. I just needed to rewrite the rough draft. I had completely forgot I did it. And I ended up including that part as part of my paper because that's how like bad my post-concussion syndrome was and how like meta the whole thing was. Like it was so bad to the point where I didn't even remember doing the research and writing the paper for it. And this wasn't like across 3 months. This was across like 5 or 6 weeks from like being assigned the paper to like actually writing the paper. And so that was definitely one of those like moments of like, oh yeah, like I am that bad, right? And now it's like proud to say that I'm pretty much 100%. Like I would say I'm 100%. And part of that path was going to chiropractic school where essentially I graduated, became a strength and conditioning coach, was working at a high level doing sports performance training and personal training, working with professional athletes, college athletes, elite level high school athletes. And just being in that field, I would ask, like the general question of like, if you're in my shoes, 22, 23 years old, what would you want to do? Like if you were me, what would you do? All of them pretty much just said the same thing, which is they'd either go back to chiropractic school or PT school to get an advanced degree so they can do more with their clients, right? And I was like, okay, like, at the time PT school didn't really call for me. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to chiropractic school. And then from chiropractic school, originally the emphasis was going to be sports performance and like sports medicine. And I kind of quickly realized that wasn't for me. And that's kind of I went more the direction I'm in now, which is more like the family medicine, the technique I practice, which is called sacral occipital technique, and just kind of seeing everyone, including athletes. And that's what I've realized, like I really love to do and I really enjoy. And through that journey is how I continue to heal a lot of my own post-concussion syndrome, just over time, learning a lot of like functional medicine principles, like movement principles, just like one layer at a time, just figuring it out.
Not that I want to tell you how to run your business, but I'm curious as to why do you specialize in concussions? Like, is this a population you serve?
Yes and no. So it's interesting you mentioned that because it's something that's been in the back of my head, and actually like thinking about this interview and doing it for the second time, it's been something that I want to start marketing specifically for, is that like, hey, I am an expert on this, like one, firsthand for myself, and two, there really isn't a lot of doctors, really, if any, that incorporate the full spectrum of how to heal like post-concussion syndrome the way I did, whether it's like the movement practices like meditation, sauna therapy, cold plunging, specific functional medicine principles of having to like fix the gut, the HPA axis, healing the adrenals, healing the brain, like literally like every step of the way. It's like I had to master it just for myself. So
yes,
yeah, I want to.
It's the most relatable story ever. And in terms of a unique selling proposition, the fact that you've had 11 concussions yourself and you've been able to work through it and figure it out on your own is the easiest sell for people, right? Is like, oh, you obviously had the same issue that many people probably had. I mean, again, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your business, but like definitely in regards of it's a huge opportunity for you.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think it's part of it was like, let me just work right until now. And now I'm at this like second, almost like a transition phase where it's like, I love what I do. I'm doing it right. And this is like my passion with how I run my business currently. But I do want to take that next step to build more passive income, whether it's, passive modalities or creating like online programs. And I think that might be part of it, is creating more of like an online program and working with maybe groups with doing post-concussion syndrome like treatment, and having a functional medicine practitioner as a part of the group. But I don't know what that looks like just yet. It's in the back of my mind, kind of just sitting there. So I'm definitely gonna take this as a sign to sit with it more intently.
Yeah, I've never looked into what the market looks like, but I mean, it just makes me think of knees over toes guy, if you're familiar with all of his stuff, right? Like he had knee pain, he figured it out on his own, and then he sold tons of programs and courses and has lots of passive income through it. In a lot of ways, again, I don't know what the market looks like in terms of concussions or specifically what chiropractors are doing, but what are chiropractors doing, right? Is like that could be a unique angle. I mean, obviously, yes, it's huge in regards to people that need it, but who's serving it and how are they serving it? I have no idea, but
yeah. Well, to answer that, like some chiropractors do a little bit, right? There's some functional neurologic based chiropractors that specialize in concussions, right? There's some functional medicine doctors that work with concussions. There's very few that do both, right? Then there's also a whole separate branch that like don't really be like, hey, the biggest thing that's going to help you is infrared sauna therapy for the brain derived neurotropic factor, right? Because that was the biggest thing for me, right? Anytime I do a consult with someone with post-concussion syndrome, I'm like, hey, before I tell you anything else, like do sauna 5 days a week. Like that's going to help you more than literally anything.
Yeah. In my recent discovery, basically anything to get blood flow is incredible for basically neurogenesis, like neuroplasticity of the brain. So sauna, aerobic exercise, like things of that nature, massively beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get into the hybrid model that you seem to have developed then. So, I mean, I could talk all day about like why you should niche down your practice, but we don't need to do that on this episode. But I do want to get into where you have landed yourself, which is this hybrid model of both doing at home and having an office as well.
Yeah.
Curious as to why did you just decide to go that route, and what are maybe the pros and cons if somebody who's listening and curious about doing the same thing?
Yeah. So I first started doing the house calls almost out of a need of necessity, right? I essentially opened up my practice here in Austin with $0. Like I had my EHR malpractice and a chiropractic table and a website, and that was it. And like had to start from there. And so one of the easiest ways was to do house calls. And I kind of always wanted to do house calls to begin with, because I realized through, when I was in chiropractic school driving for Lyft and Postmates, I kind of like just driving around town, right? And I'm a firm believer of just like doing the thing you enjoy and almost doubling down with it. And so it's like, yeah, I enjoy driving around town. Like I don't mind driving and being in my car. I know there's a market for it. And especially at the beginning of COVID, which is when I started my practice, a lot of people didn't want to leave their house. A lot of people were working from home, right? And so that combination of working from home or not wanting to leave from home, it became convenient for them to basically pay a little extra to have a chiropractor come to them. And especially people, I've realized now, the big thing is for people with families, right? Like it's hard to get like, you, the husband, 2 or 3 kids all on the same schedule and get everyone in the car and go to the chiropractor's office for everyone to get seen, right? But if I'm coming to the house, it's like, little Johnny comes in, he gets adjusted, he's off to baseball practice, I adjust the mom, the dad, one of them has to leave to take Johnny. Then the daughter comes home from gymnastics, right? Like when I'm finishing up, like it's just like, it becomes this like smooth transition of like, yeah, I get to see everyone while we're there, and it works for me and it works for them. And it ends up being like a win-win for me and for the patients and the family.
Do you end up treating the entire family then? I mean, like if you're in their home and let's say the mom or dad was the one that wanted to get adjusted, does it just naturally transition to basically just end up treating the whole family?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I end up treating, like it starts with the family, then, the next time the mom is in town and she wants to get adjusted, so she gets adjusted too. And then, from there I end up seeing her, the neighbors, like it ends up really expanding and becoming like almost like in itself the marketing, because you're already there and people are sitting there watching you, and you kind of end up having this like captive audience, which, really helps for the business. Right. And over time, I transitioned to I started with mainly like only house calls. And then I started opening up the office because I had more people who wanted to see me, but they themselves were kind of on the road themselves, like realtors, people that were going to the office for work, people who just frankly didn't want me coming in their home. And so then I was like, all right, well, let me open up an office. And originally I had like an actual office location and kind of had one, then another. And then now I have a home office set up that I really enjoy. So now I feel like I got the best of both worlds where I have like the low overhead of the house calls and I still have the low overhead of like a really good like work live setup or home office setup. And you can't even tell it's like a home office when you walk in because I have like a retail front door. And to me now that's been like the best of both worlds where I'm like out all day doing house calls and then otherwise I'm home all day and people are coming to see me. And that also has a lot of like joy and convenience to it as well, to be able to like see several people in a row. And then it also helps seeing people early in the morning and later on in the evening because it's not like I have to wait for traffic to die down or I'm not waiting 2 hours before I go home and see the last patient. It's like I'm already home. I'm like, sure, come at 7. I'll eat dinner first, like do whatever, work out, take a shower, and then the patient comes at 7. I do that last patient from 7 to 7:30. And that adds up financially at the end of the year when you're doing those like extra 2, 3, 4 visits at the end of the month.
If you could have all your patients now in your home office, would you do it, or do you like getting out?
I like getting out. Yeah. That's why I think right now is like the perfect flow for me doing the house calls and the office. And so Monday, Wednesday, Friday is house calls, Tuesday, Thursday, and then some Saturday mornings I'm in the home office. And so it's like literally every other day I'm alternating. And I know I myself would not enjoy being in an office 5 days a week. And I also know that I do enjoy the house calls 5 days a week because I've done it, but it became too much driving for me. Like at the end of the week, I was tired, my back was getting sore, it just wasn't feeling good physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally get it. I'm curious in terms of the networking piece. You briefly alluded to it, of like how obviously I would say the most common thing I hear from 99.9% of the chiropractors that I talk to is that their practice grows via referrals, word of mouth, and networking, and like doing some sort of events. And I think that's great. I think that's definitely a good model. It has very high conversions in regards to just because when you're face to face somebody, you have that relationship, they're way more likely to work with you. But I'd be curious, as somebody that I know is like very good at networking, you've used networking as a growth strategy. What are maybe some non-traditional strategies that you've seen, or what would you recommend to somebody that maybe doesn't love the networking side of things?
I think it's a matter of like leaning into what you enjoy and things that you are good at, right? Like you're saying, I'm good at networking. I can sit down and talk to people about what I do. I can ask them. I'm engaging. I'm like a true extrovert. Like when I'm not feeling good, I'll go to a busy restaurant and sit at a bar top and order an appetizer just to be around the hustle, bustle, and noise. And I'll leave feeling better. Like that I am true extrovert, right? So like networking is easy for me because I could be like kind of tired from my day and go to a networking event and have a good time and feel better leaving the networking event, right? Not everyone is like that. We're not designed like that, right? So
I am not.
I think it's, yeah, you run the networking group, which is to me always funny, but it makes sense also in some ways.
I do it in sprints. I can
Yes.
host an event. I can do the networking that I need to do because I know it's important. And I know, honestly, generally speaking, it's good for my well-being and my health. But the other 99.9% of the time, no way.
Yeah, for me, it's total opposite. And so I think for some people, you got to figure out what you're good at, right? Like, are you good at like one-on-one lunch meetings, right? Are you good at social media marketing? For me, like I know myself, like I am not good at graphic design and copywriting. And, I could tell other people good ideas for themselves, but doing it for myself, like it's more difficult. It doesn't flow as well for me. Some people are better at getting like I have a friend in Las Vegas where he's like the #1 rated chiropractor after like 3 years, right? And he's really good at motivating his front desk people. So what did he do? He motivated them to get a bunch of Google reviews, right? That was what he was good at, right? He's still good at networking. He's still good at marketing. But the biggest thing that he did is he doubled and tripled and quadrupled down in is Google reviews, right? Like I've doubled and tripled down in my networking. I know some people who've like doubled and tripled down with their like signage and banners and like print material, right? And that's worked for them. And I think it's like you got to find the thing that kind of like feels like it literally makes you feel good, and the things that you are easy for you to do. And it's like maximize that to its fullest before you do other stuff. Like if you're really good with like SEO and paid Google ads, even though it's like supposed to be like not good right now, like just double and triple down with that until it's like you've maximized it, right? Like if it's, you put dollar in and you're getting $3 out and other chiropractors are getting $1.50 out. Yeah. Just keep doing that.
Totally. I just wrote a newsletter actually on this exact topic called the Google Trifecta. Is one marketing strategy that I've seen super useful for anybody trying to get good at like the local SEO side of things. Obviously you're good at networking, but the local Google SEO side is like you need a fully completed Google business profile. You need to have a number of reviews, at least 50 or more, ideally, which you can automate a lot of that with like text sequences. Is if you have already seen a number of patients, you can literally just set up text sequences that sends them the link and reminds them to give you a review. And then the third piece of it is, ads, Google ads, but also local service ads. Most people don't know those, and I've gotten more chiropractors set up on those, and they're super easy. You literally just set a budget and forget about it for the most part. And then you basically just get calls, and you only pay if somebody calls to set up an appointment with you.
Yeah.
And to your point of like, you put $1 in and get 3 out, worth it every single time. But that's another strategy. I think that's, I think you nailed it in terms of knowing where your strengths are and leaning into those things. Cause I talk about this all the time as well, is that it all works.
Yeah.
Like social media works, paid ads work, local networking works, a website with SEO works. Like it all works. It's just a matter of, do you want to put the time or pay somebody to figure out the nuance to make it work? And so like you can rather pay somebody to do it, or you can pay for it in time to figure out how to do it. But it all works if you're just willing to put the time or resources towards doing it. Which brings me to my next question is, for you, I know you're it seems like you're stepping in this phase of delegating, outsourcing, hiring for things that maybe you don't love doing or don't want to do.
Yeah.
How do you figure out when you're ready to do those things? And how do you figure out, obviously the cliche answer is like, just get the stuff off your plate that you hate. But how have you done it more like tactically? How have you got some of that stuff off of your plate?
I think it's biggest thing is like buying your time back, and like almost like the cost per time that you buy back. Right. So the first thing I did is I hired a VA, and I wish someone would have told me to hire a VA from like day one. And I'm saying that not having a VA currently, right? But I've kind of automated, and I'll tell the whole story. So I had the VA. She was amazing. I had her for 2 years, and I had her doing all the stuff I didn't want to do. I had her doing my notes, where I would send her just like an audio of the patient visit, and she would transcribe it. She would do all the billing, and she would send the patient like, receipts and super bills and everything. She kept track of all my books for me, like my actual business books. And she kept track of a lot of the patient data, like all the stuff, basically anything that involved a computer, I trained her to do. And it actually didn't take that much time to train her. And unfortunately, she ended up having some health issues. So over time, like she couldn't keep up with the job anymore. And since then I've tried one other VA, that one didn't work. And I've since then started using this app called Scribe Atheus, which is like ATHESA, I believe. And it's basically a mobile scribe for healthcare providers. A lot of the other like AI scribe tools aren't geared towards healthcare providers, so they don't know the correct keywords. This tool actually allows you to like do the notes, and it'll chart it like a medical chart, and it actually knows the medical like words and lingo, and so it comes out really well. So that kind of, I've shifted to that to VA, but I would say like using a VA was huge for me. And then the other thing that's been really good is like anything that like takes me longer than it should to do, right? Kind of like, again, buying back time, I try to outsource. So like outsourcing the website and the website editing was really huge for me. And then even like some of my interior design stuff, like, for my office, it's like, I don't know what to do for design, right? Like it's like table, chairs, like, yeah, it's a table and it's a chair. And so, using, other friends and colleagues and just taking pictures and like asking questions and having them make decisions for me, like that was huge, right? For the new space.
That's clever.
Yeah.
Where did you get your VA?
I used a company called Live Free Virtual Services, and since then they've kind of changed up how they do their VA. But there's a lot of different websites.
What country are they from?
The one I had was from the Philippines, and she was phenomenal.
And why do you not have one now?
The reason because when I was going through that first transition from her to the second one quickly just like failed me essentially, and so then that one cost more money than it should have, and that was just a bad experience. So I got lucky with the first one, unlucky with the second one. And then at that point I was in a relationship where I was like, okay, let's take a step back, let's save a little bit more money. We wanted to kind of just, be smart with our budget. And so then I was like, okay, let me pull that money back. But in hindsight, I kind of wish I would have kept that VA, and pretty soon I'll probably look into hiring another VA if I could for 10 to 20 hours. And so that's the thing is like, for me, I'm like very small practice. I see, 6 to 8 people a day, but if I had a busier practice where I'm seeing 40 people a day, I would definitely have 1 or 2 virtual assistants, right? One virtual assistant for all the note keeping, scribes, like kind of like patient management stuff. And then another one for all of the marketing side of things, right?
Have you ever read that book, Buy Back Your Time, Dan Martell?
No, I don't think I have. I don't even think I've heard of it.
Oh, wow, man. Yeah, that book changed my life, man. It's exactly what you're talking about. The short of it is the part that most revolutionized my business was understanding your pain line. Because I'm curious, as now that you don't have a VA, it sounds like you're probably doing a lot of those tasks on your own that you mentioned before, right? Of the bookkeeping and all that other stuff, right?
Here's what's interesting is like, not yet because of AI. So AI has made a big jump in the last year, right? And like you can train a VA to use AI, and if I had a bigger practice, I would do that. But because it's just me and it's a smaller practice, I haven't tried using the AI for bookkeeping. I know they exist, right? And so I'm going to try to like test it out. I think even like that app like Rocket Money, I think they might actually have one to use. But the AI for the scribe tool is doing like 70% of what my VA did. 70% of her hours was just transcribing my notes.
Got it.
And so now that I have that, that's still saving me a bunch of time, because essentially after my patient visits, whether it's house call or office, I just open up the scribe tool and do the same dictation I would do with her, but it's still transcribed.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then there's 2 parts to that then. Agreed. I think that it's gotten very interesting how I'm also using automations, especially with a lot of my clients, as well as like kind of what I was talking before of even something like getting Google business reviews. Is like you mentioned a doctor that had their front desk do it. That can almost entirely be automated now for the most part with AI. Even like setting up appointments can be something that a virtual assistant often did that can actually almost entirely be through AI now, with like both AI chats and also AI phone calls. So you can actually have a conversation now with an AI bot, and they'll collect the information that you need and schedule them into your appointment for you. So yeah, it's become very interesting because I agree. I'm a little bit in the middle in the sense of I try to automate as much as I humanly possibly can. It just makes sense to use an AI for most of that stuff. But then for the stuff that there's definitely a handful of things that I can't possibly outsource yet anyways. I mean, AI bots are getting better. AI agents are becoming a thing, but they're nowhere near where they need to be for some of the tasks. But yeah, I was just going to say on a final note on that was that the book, Buy Back Your Time, is he talks about the pain line. And so people don't grow into pain. And so when you have so many patients and so many tasks, and you're doing the scribing and the scheduling and the invoicing and the contracts and everything else, is that people feel overwhelmed, and then their business stagnates because you don't grow into pain. And so you have to find a way to buy back that time so that you can focus on the things that you innately really get paid to do, which at this point is literally adjusting people and providing care and practicing. Anything that's not that, really, I mean, unless you're selling, really isn't making the business that much money. So it's like getting that stuff out so you can buy back your time and then raise the pain line so that you can spend more time seeing more patients, making more money, assuming that's the goal. If that's not your goal, it's a different conversation. But yeah, just...
I want to piggyback off with that end, right? Because I remember in the last conversation we had, it was like trying to figure out like, where is the end, right? How much is enough? And again, I'm kind of fortunate where I kind of figured out that how much enough is enough for me. And it's kind of now, and that's kind of, what I was telling you about before, was like with the way my practice is set up, like it is enough. And it's interesting because I've had a lot of people where they hear about what I do and they're like, well, you'd probably make more money if you went into practice and you start seeing, 40 patients a day. And it's just like, hold on. Like, I don't even want to do that. Like, for me, this is as good as it gets, right? Like, I get to drive around Austin on, beautiful Wednesday days and like take my time, and I'm still bringing home more profit than most other chiropractors. And that's not me just saying that. Like it's true, but it's like that. How much is your time worth, but also how much is your joy worth, right? Like I really enjoy my day, right? And for some doctors, right, if they're like really hustling for like 4 days a week, and those days are kind of like hard, but then they're really enjoying themselves like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they're like find that work-life balance, that's also joy for them, right? And yeah, they could probably open up Friday and Saturday also and make more money. It's like almost like, how do you know when making more money is costing you your joy, right? Because for me, right, and it depends on your priority, but it's like money gets you the things you enjoy now or later, right? When you're saving up for retirement so that you can have a joyous retirement, right? You can enjoy your twilights of your years. Now same thing. It's like I enjoy what I do and I'm lucky I get paid to do it, right? And then also I'm doing it in a way that I enjoy. And I know when I hit a certain point with certain things, like, if I have to sit down and edit my website, that's awful. Like
joy goes down.
Joy is completely minimized, right? And so I'm going to spend every penny I have to go do something I enjoy while I have someone else, edit the website, right?
Yeah.
Because that's just awful to me, right? And so I think people sometimes don't see the big picture of just like what brings you joy, right? Like your business could bring you joy, whether it's like in the business or what the business provides you, but also like that's the focus, right? Like I'm doing this business because I enjoy it, or I'm doing this business because it makes me money, and I like to spend my money, skiing, right? So I'm going to make sure that during the winter I can ski 5 days a week, right?
How do you figure that stuff out, though? I agree, right? I think at the core of the message you're communicating here is that spend the time, like set up your life so that you're able to spend the time doing the things that you enjoy as much as possible and avoid the things you don't enjoy as much as possible. And obviously there's a bit of a conversation there about trial and error, and you just like experience life and you learn what you like, and you learn you like chocolate ice cream versus vanilla ice cream. So you spend more time eating chocolate than you do vanilla. Obviously that's a lame example, but
it's a great example.
Yeah, but I think it's equally true for how you spend your day-to-day life. Because I know for myself personally is I've realized for me, the work is the joy in a lot of ways, assuming it's the right kind of work. Exactly to your point, is like if for you it's website design is a nightmare. For me, it's I love doing some of that stuff. And so it's like, how does one figure some of that stuff out? Because like, yeah, you want to begin with the end in mind, know where you're going, but it's really hard to know where you're going if you don't know what you like and what you don't like, right?
Yeah. I think that's where it's like kind of gets, to me, it's fun of just exploring what do you like, right? Like when I sat back and think about it, it was like, oh, I did enjoy driving for Lyft. I did enjoy driving for Postmates.
You did?
Right? I did.
Wow.
Right? Like it was like something about
what is
just
Postmates, by the way?
Postmates is like Uber Eats, right?
Oh, okay. Never heard of that one.
Back in the day before. Yeah. So yeah, just for me, like driving around town doing these like 20, 30-minute drives, it was like there's something about like getting in and out of the car, like listening to music, listening to audiobooks, like just literally just driving around the city was like, oh, I kind of enjoy this, right? And I wouldn't have known that unless I did it. Right. And so it's like sometimes
I think there's clues in your childhood too.
Yeah, there is.
Because I realized one of my favorite things to do when I was younger, and I realize it's what I do all day now, is I love just like dicking around on a computer. Like just messing around on the internet, researching things, solving problems, learning about coding. I mean, I played a lot of video games, don't get me wrong. That was a huge part of it. But now that I don't play video games anymore, really at its core, it was just like dicking around with the computer. And that's literally what I do now from a marketing agency standpoint, is I'm constantly just dicking around with the internet and trying to figure out like this works, this doesn't work. If I put this word here in this landing page with this funnel, like that's all I do now.
Yeah. It becomes a game and you're winning based off the metrics.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for me, it's like, instead of metrics, the metric is like my personal joy, right? Like, how do I feel at the end of the day, right? Like if I'm feeling tired and exhausted and spent. There's some days where it's like, I just worked a lot. It's like, I'm going to be tired. Right. But if it's like a nice day and I had like a good breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and like, and I'm coming home and I'm like, I don't feel good. Right. It's like something's wrong. Right. Like I did something wrong today, and then that needs to change. But I think that's kind of what it is like almost for people, especially entrepreneurs, like just doing like a daily check-in in the morning and the evening, like with themselves, right? Or if they have someone who's really close to them, like with their close one, right? Like, hey, like, like checking in, like, do I feel good about this still? Like, do I still enjoy this, right? Like, is this fun for me? Is this not fun for me, right? If it's not fun, maybe sell the business or change up the business, or, maybe you got to start outsourcing more, take more off your plate, right? Because yeah, it's like life is too short to not be enjoyed. And especially with business, it's like, yeah, have the end in mind with it, and look back to childhood, see what you liked in childhood, see what you liked as an adult, right? Like, see what really made you excited. Like, I knew in high school, another quick story is I was a good athlete, right? I was good at football, I was good at track and field. One of my highlights of my athletic career was when I was the shot and put discus coach for the girls, like the girls shot put, like the girls throwers, right? I coached the girls throwers. They won league, and the boys didn't. Like, we weren't nearly as good, but the girls won, and that to me felt better than anything else. And it was like, looking back, I was like, oh, I'm definitely like meant to be a coach. Like, that felt better for me than any of my actual like athletic achievements, knowing that like I coached them and I helped them win and be number one. Like, that was like, hell yeah. Right. So looking back, I was like, yeah, I'm supposed to be the coach in the background, right? I'm not supposed to be the one on stage. Like, let me be a strength and conditioning coach, right? Let me coach the athletes to be very successful. Like, I enjoyed that. And that's what led me to do strength and conditioning. And now it's kind of like same, but different with chiropractic. It's like, let me help take care of you so that you can be successful in whatever you do in life, whether it's a mom, an entrepreneur, a grandma, like just, whatever floats your boat, I'm going to help you keep your boat afloat.
It's interesting insight. As a final note on this topic, I guess I just want to hit home this idea of there's this very popular YouTuber. Some people have heard of him. His name is Casey Neistat. He's like one of the most well-known YouTubers on the internet. And they were talking to him about very similar things of like, why do you do all your own editing, and why do you do all your own scripting and all the other pieces that come into making his films and his videos? Because like, if he didn't do that thing and he was just doing what he is truly incredible at, he's one of the most creative people on the internet. And if he just focused all of his energy doing just the creative side of things, he could make a ton more money. And his response was great. It was basically like, well, because I like doing that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's like he's just happening to make money off of it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
Like, I think those are the best businesses. And again, it's definitely not for everyone. Like, some people, like, their passion in life is laying on the beach, right? You should do whatever job that's going to allow you to lay on the beach more, right?
Lifeguard.
Yeah. Like,
I used to be a lifeguard. You don't do anything.
Yeah, you don't do anything except for save people when it's necessary, and that's a whole nother story, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I'm happy where I happen to get paid for what I do, right? Like, I'm sure are happy you get paid to dig around the computer and figure out the metrics in social media and marketing and design, right?
I am now, but that's the thing, right? Is like what I was doing before as a practitioner, as an OT, I didn't love that. Like, it took me a long time to figure that out though, and to get out of that. And that's why I posed that question, is because, I mean, Matthew McConaughey said it before, is we're really bad at knowing what we want, but we're really good at knowing what we don't want. And so most of figuring things out is trial by error, unfortunately. And so I was just curious as to like, how would somebody short track some of that stuff? Because
it's that self-reflection, right?
Yeah.
Like, taking time every day, being like, how did today go? Right? Because I'm sure, like, I would bet that if you started doing that, like, while you were in OT school, you would have probably never even practiced as an OT. You'd have probably been like, I don't think this is for me.
Probably. I mean, yeah, at that moment, I was still playing a lot of video games, and I was probably doing some escapism there, right? It's like, I wasn't reflecting. I was just like escaping to playing video games and then going back to class and escaping. And so, yeah, you're probably right. So then how important do you think it even is now to have like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan? Because obviously that's a big thing for a business, right? Is like the first thing most, even an investor or anybody starting a business, is going to be like, where are you going, right? Like, what's the end? What's the goal? What's the 5 or 10-year plan? Do you still think that's important for people to have?
I do, but I think it's like, oh, what's the saying where it's like hold on loosely to like well-made plans. I forget what the actual quote is, but it's basically that, right? It's like have like an like amazing plan, right? Like action plan for something that in that moment feels good, right? But also I think in that reflection, it's like look at that 5-year plan every year, right? Like if 5 years is like, is it the same plan? No, like tweak it up a little bit, right? Like I've tweaked up my plan a couple times, right? Where it's like, you know what? Like, I think I need to shift this, right? I need to shift that. Like, you know what? Like when I added the office, it was like, oh, people are asking me for the office. I'm going to include the office as a 5-year plan now, right? And now my 5-year plan is to have the passive modalities. But now I'm like, maybe the 5-year plan needs to include this online concussion protocol, right? Like that's not in the 5-year plan, but you know, it's probably time to potentially add it in.
It's interesting about that is I've heard it said, write your, what is it? Your goals in pen, but your plans in pencil or something like that, is like have some direction, in other words, but how you're going to get there, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Because I do yearly goal setting and I've been doing it for, I don't know, at least 5 years now. And I can pretty consistently tell you almost every quarter they adjust.
Yeah.
Because like you just have new data, you have new insights, you meet new people, you maybe your vision gets bigger, or like even the idea of this past year when we did it in January or December, me and Michaela did it. We rented a place out in Marble Falls and took 3 days to just like plan for the year ahead, which I think is important, and it was good. But the fact that our future goals are to have a ranch with, you know, goats and chickens and kids and dogs and cats and all the things. Had you asked me that even a couple years ago, I would have laughed in your face. I'd have been like, no. I'd have been like, I don't want any responsibilities. I want to be totally autonomous. I want to be able to go to Thailand whenever I want. And now I'm like, you know, the ranch life kind of sounds awesome.
You're like, yeah, feeding goats sounds great.
Yeah, which I never would have thought of, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's just so much like deep wisdom in that of, I think, have the direction, whether it's your life or your business, but how you get there and what it's going to look like by the time you get there, I mean, who knows? Yeah,
absolutely. Like there's a certain amount of like having like trust and faith in A, yourself, but B, in like, you know, whatever you believe in, God, the cosmic universe, whatever you want to call it. And just like, yeah, there's a path here, right? And as long as I just like have a certain amount of trust in my own self and, you know, trust in God and the universe, like it's going to happen. It might not be the way you think it's going to happen, but it's definitely going to be good. And it's definitely going to probably be fun for you.
I have a note here about being the top 1% chiropractor. Why do I have that? Is this something you said?
Potentially, probably.
Okay. I have a note here about basically overcoming imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah. So I think imposter syndrome, like for me, was it actually, like there's some parts of it that was tough and some parts that wasn't tough, right? Like coming out of school, I knew I was definitely better than the average chiropractor, and I treated myself as such. And, you know, I still charge as much as I do, right? Like kind of how I worked my fee schedule in was, I thought if I wasn't the 1%, but the top 10% of chiropractors, and this was me like 2 years out of school. So, you know, maybe there's a little ego involved, but it's also how I felt ultimately, right? And I was like, all right, what does the top 10% of chiropractors make, right? That's going to be my salary after all my business expenses, like after the profit first stuff of like, let me pay my taxes, my VA, my, you know, malpractice website. Let me get all of my general expenses, predicted expenses out the door. I want to make the top 10% of chiropractors. But
how much is that?
It was at the time like $350,000.
Profit or revenue?
Profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
cool.
so, basically reverse the math, right? Like if I want to see like 8 to 12 patients a day on average, you know, I think I'd average it out at 10, and then, you know, 5 days a week for me, 50 weeks a year, cause I want to take a 2-week vacation. You know, how much do I need to charge for a new patient visit and follow-ups if I did that? And that's what I set my fee schedule to. Right. Because I knew it's like, is it possible for me to see on average 10 patients a day? Absolutely. Right. Like, I don't say no problem, but essentially close to no problem.
Is that what you're at? Are you?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. I'm right. I'm right at between 8 to 12 patients a day on average.
Okay.
So doing well.
Are you considered a top 10% chiropractor then based on the numbers?
Financially, yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And honestly, for chiropractors, it's kind of sad because it's, it's not that high, right?
$300,000 profit?
I think that might have been revenue. I'd have to like double check, but I want to say it's still like that. Like I didn't make 300,000. I wish I did.
Okay.
Right. But instead of taking 2 weeks off, I took almost 6 weeks off. Right. And then also I'm definitely have worked less than usual. And then also for some people, I've done like a sliding scale. Right. If I saw every patient and then the Medicare patients also skew the numbers a little bit. Right. But even then, I still know that I make top 10%, not top 1%. I think that's the difference. Is I know I'm top 10% of chiropractors with profit.
Because the financial numbers actually shock most people in terms of like actually how few businesses actually make over even six figures. If your business makes over 6 figures, like you're already almost, I think you're in like the top 3%, if not less than that.
Yeah.
So like that's why I was wondering. I was like $300,000 in profit. That seems like definitely 1%.
Well, I would say this, like with my business and the way I created the model, if I saw the 10 to 12 people like actually cash paying at like my actual rate, it would be 300,000. Right. Like I see enough people to do that. But then again, the Medicare numbers skew it. And then for people who are, financial hardships, I lower the number and that quickly takes a hit. Right. So instead of making like $200 an hour, I'll make $70 that hour.
So you take insurance?
No, I don't take insurance. I take only Medicare insurance.
Only Medicare?
Only Medicare.
Yeah. Cause but they have to have there's some loophole there, isn't there? Like if they sign off, if they have a private insurance or something like that.
It's so complicated where like there's Medicare Advantage, and then there's supplemental plans for Medicare. And then for chiropractors, we have to be participating or non-participating with Medicare. If we're non-participating, we can charge them at the time of the visit, the Medicare rate. It's super complex.
All right. We don't need to go to the rabbit hole. Okay. So anything we didn't cover in terms of the business, in terms of topics related to marketing, finance, admin, hiring, is this something you've even considered?
I've considered it, and I've heard enough stories where I'm like, I'm not going to probably do it. I think if I ever hired, it'd be like a partnership with like a nutritionist or functional medicine doctor or like a nurse practitioner, or even a physical therapist, right? Like that would probably be the only way I would hire a partnership, is something like that. But that's not a part of the 5-year plan.
Not yet anyways.
Not yet.
And then you're going to get in the concussion world and you're going to go, man, like there's all these people that need help with concussions and I need them to bring more people onto the team, and who knows where it's going to go.
Yeah. Then who knows, right? Yeah.
Because that's how it happens, man.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's how it happened for me. I mean, there's one of my favorite books of all time, E-Myth Revisited. If you're familiar with it, it's basically the most classic small business book of all time. But 99.9% of people start a small business as what he calls the technician. Is they're doing the thing. The example he uses in the book is like the person who's really good at baking pie, so she starts a pie business. In chiropractor, it's like you're really good at providing care and adjusting people, so you start a chiropractic business. Or I'm good at websites, so I start a website business. But then when you get into it and you spend enough years doing it, eventually you realize it's like you basically just like hired yourself for a really expensive job that you can never really leave. And it's fine if you love it, right?
Yeah.
Like if you love baking pies or you love providing care, awesome. But at some point you want to take a vacation, or you want to, take 6 months off, or you want to sell it one day. And then you realize like, oh man, okay, there's these other roles. And he calls them the manager and the entrepreneur, which are just like different roles within the business. But
yeah,
we all do it, man. So
we do.
Yeah. I was just curious. Well, cool, man. Anything else we didn't cover? I covered most of my notes here in terms of
pretty much covered it all. Like, I will say one last thing is, be persistent. There was a lot of times early on with business where it was like tough, right? Because like early on, starting from scratch with no money, it was like, no patience, doing a lot of networking. I guess that's the one last thing too with that is like the 80-20 rule. Like, don't forget to apply it in everything in your business, right? Like 80% of my referrals come from about 20% of my patients, right? And just leaning into that. And that's just how it is for everything. That's how it is for my business. Like, yeah, everything in life, 80-20 rule. Don't
Yeah.
forget it.
Yeah. I guess on a final note on that as well, then, is it, do you have practices or strategies you use to apply to pay attention to those things? Because it's true, right? Is like, you're going to get 80% of your results from 20% of whatever the thing is that you're doing, whether it's the networking or the social platform you're on, or maybe even like the type of service that you're offering, right? Is like maybe you have a very specific service that you offer that this small piece of it is like what most of your patients or customers want. Do you have practices for how you figure some of that stuff out?
I lean into that. Like that becomes the priority, right? So like, I don't want to say those patients become the priority, but like almost energetically, like those patients become the priority, right? Because I know if they refer me more people, yeah, I'm absolutely going to get them in a little bit quicker, right? Like any doctor who says otherwise, like you should reconsider that, right?
So do you have any, or excuse me, I wanted to say chiro, but do you have any concussion patients right now?
Not technically, no.
Okay.
Yeah, interestingly, right?
Yeah, I was just curious because like if you did, it's like, well, let's lean into those for a little bit and see what happens. But
yeah, but yeah, the 80-20 rule, lean into the patients, to the network that provides the 80% of the roles. Like if I had which I do, I have some people that refer me a decent amount of patients that are other healthcare providers. Yeah, get lunch with them once a month, once every other week, right? Like, and also don't forget to return the favor, but like lean into those relationships, right? And if you have someone that you've known, like, I'll say there's a group of doctors who I've referred like maybe, and not exaggeration, maybe like a dozen patients to, right? High ticket patients. And not once have I got a referral from them, right? And I will say like, it's going to make it a little bit, I will say it will make it harder to refer those patients because I subconsciously have like this in the back of my mind, like, if I send this patient to them, like they might not get a referral, or I might end up finding another group of doctors that are just as good. And it's like, let me try those doctors instead, right? Like who knows, right? But lean into the 80-20 relationships.
I mean, yeah, business is definitely a relationship game. That's interesting. Why did you even decide to refer to them in the first place?
They're really good at what they do.
Uh,
Yeah. They're really good with like orthopedics. So it's like, yeah, let me refer you by patients who need like orthopedic medical doctor consultations.
It shocks me. I mean, generally speaking, reciprocity is a pretty standard thing of just humans in general, right? So
Yeah.
I'm a little shocked by that. But, well, I have one last question. Before I ask that question, I want to acknowledge you for expanding upon our previous conversation and clearly of putting some thought into what the next steps are going to look like for you in your practice in terms of potentially leaning into the concussion world. And clearly finding this place between the hybrid model that you seem to really enjoy it. And I think that's great. So
yeah, thank you.
For sure. Last question. So it's whatever your best piece of advice is. So if you're to go back to ground zero and talk to your younger self when you're starting your practice or anybody else that was starting their practice, what would you tell them?
Have the end in mind. Yeah. I think that's probably the most important.
I like it. Thanks for being on the show.